Fighting continued until 1975, when the North finally conquered the South and reunited the country under communist rule.
Suppose a parent of someone killed in the Vietnam War said to you, Mr. Kissinger, tell me one reason, since politics deals in results, tell me one result that we have of that makes it worth the death of my son.
Well, of course, you have to remember when we came into office, 32,000 had already been killed.
Sure.
And when we were in office, to be sure, 14,000 more were killed. However, 9,000 of those in the first year, but no matter what we did, would not have been able to change the situation. So what we attempted to do is to extricate the United States from this war without at the same time creating such a crisis of confidence in the United States. We attempted to achieve what we considered an honorable solution, in which we withdrew about 150,000 troops a year, and the one requirement we made is that we would not overthrow a government that our predecessors had put into office. We hadn't put it into office.
When you watch the Kissinger interview, you'll notice he talks about how people didn't understand what he and Nixon were doing and how they felt they had to do this to withdraw. And Kissinger in this interview with Cabot doesn't seem to show any emotional intelligence about the consequences of his strategic thinking.
Can't you just about give a yes-no answer to the Vietnam War was not worth it?
You have to ask yourself when, at what point. I go back to 65. Was it worth it to put 550,000 troops into Vietnam? I would have to say, probably not. Was it worth it for us to attempt to extricate ourselves honorably? I would have to say, in retrospect, yes. That was the problem that we faced.
In terms of what the war means for Americans today, I think it continues to be, to some extent, an open wound in the American body politic.
Indeed, one could argue that some of the divisions in our country today are a product of the Vietnam period, because the Vietnam quagmire always comes back whenever people begin to doubt that there's an exit strategy. One of the lessons for everyone, including the military, of Vietnam was don't get into something unless you know how to get out of it.
I served at West Point, and when we were sending fine young men over to that war, and I served in that war, and I saw fine young men not come home. If you look at my postmortems, they involve the fallacy of bad policy making by politicians who simply didn't understand the world they were living in.
So I